welcome to another Drop event. I'm Jeff, and I'm here with Patrick today. We're going to be talking about the commercial Dropkick iron and sulfur filter. As we've done in the past, we're going to have a live Q&A after this. This session is previously recorded, but we will be back live right after this with a Q&A. We want to make sure all your questions get answered. So if you have any questions right now or at any point during this broadcast, just text them to the number below, and they will be forwarded to our panel during the live Q&A session. So Patrick, for people that have seen any of our previous live events, they've been introduced to you before, but for people that are just tuning in for the first time, do you want to say a little bit about yourself and what you do here?
Sure. My name is Patrick Fraser. I'm a software engineer, although I do spend quite a bit of time down here in the water lab, helping out with a lot of different things.
All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about the Dropkick commercial iron and sulfur filter, which is a brand new product for us. It's upcoming. It's so new, I don't even know when it's going to be released, but it's coming soon. Do you want to tell them a little bit about what it is and how it works?
Dropkick is a commercial application that's very similar to our residential sidekick that utilizes compressed air in the top of the tank, and it targets water with high levels of iron and sulfur in it. So as the water is run through that bubble of compressed air in the top, it oxidizes the ferrous iron, clear ferrous iron, into ferric iron that can be filtered out. The smart blend media in our tank neutralizes the pH and removes the filtered material before sending the water out to the outlet.
Now, for those of you who are familiar with our residential iron and sulfur single tank aeration products, you know we've got a few unique features to our products that no one else has. When we first started doing single tank aeration, we did something a little different than anyone else in that we were able to run separate cycles for a full regeneration or an air replenish. So we had a separate air replenish cycle that saved thousands of gallons of water to the consumer every year by being able to just replenish the air without having to do a full backwash. Then a few years after that, we introduced the Sidekick and the Sidewinder that put that valve, instead of having the control valve on top of that pocket of air, we put it off to the side so that only clear iron was running through the head, so that we're keeping that oxidized iron far away from the head to prevent the buildup of oxidized iron in the seal and spacer kit and the piston. So what makes the Dropkick really revolutionary is this is the first time we've applied any of that technology to a commercial system. Up to now, we've always been doing a separate aeration tank and filter tank for all of our commercial systems. This is our first ever single tank aeration filter for commercial. And I should clarify when I say single tank, obviously behind me, this is a multiplex system. This is 3 tanks. When I say single tank, I mean aeration and the filtration is taking place all in one tank, as opposed to having a separate air tank and filter tank. Patrick, aside from this being the first ever single tank system for commercial in our product line, do you want to talk about what else makes this product unique?
Sure. We leverage our existing patent for the Sidekick to allow us to put the tank valve, control valve on the bottom, which keeps it away from the pocket of air at the top. As you mentioned, when you get ferrous iron in the solution, in the water, it's going to oxidize as soon as it touches air. So if the control valve is on top of the tank, you're going to get scale on your seals on your piston. It's going to plug up your injector. It's a real problem. So by putting the valve on the bottom of the tank, it keeps it wetted 100% of the time. It never sees air, so you never get those deposits on the seals and spacers or on the piston.
So Patrick, you touched kind of in a nutshell on how the Dropkick treats the water, how it goes in, up the riser tube, hits that pocket of air, down, which oxidizes the iron, goes down through the media to filter it out. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the regeneration cycle looks like when it goes through regeneration, what it's doing, and how often that needs to happen?
Sure. There's 2 separate regenerations, as Jeff mentioned. There's a full regeneration that includes a backwash, but then there's also an aeration process that it goes through. And you can configure that to do it as early or as often as every 4 hours or as seldom as every 3 days, depending on the application. The reason you need to regenerate the air is simply that the air oxidizes the iron and the sulfur and it gets used up. Just because there's a chemical reaction and the amount of oxygen present in that air bubble gets used up, so we need to replace it. So on schedule, the control valve will open the top of the tank to drain. And it actually will creep into that position. So you don't get a large burst of compressed air coming down the drain. It just hisses out slowly. After the air bubble is flushed down the drain, you have just a few seconds of backwash just to make sure it's clear. And then the control valve will move to a position where it opens the drain to the bottom of the tank, which allows the tank to just naturally drain the water out of the tank using no venturi, no drive water. It draws air in the top of the tank through a check valve, which incidentally also serves as a vacuum breaker. So if you ever have a situation where the plumbing goes to negative pressure, which can damage the tanks, this will prevent that damage from ever happening. So after the tank is completely drained, then we go through a rapid rinse cycle, which refills the tank and repressurizes, and then it'll go back into service.
Cool. So we're actually using gravity to pull the air instead of using drive water to go through an injector to suck in air. You're saying we're just opening a valve at the bottom, using gravity to pull air in through a check valve.
As long as you have a floor drain available, or a drain that's no more than a few inches off the floor.
Right, to allow that
maybe
water to
8
naturally.
Inches, right, then you can just simply drain using gravity. And again, there's no drive water, no injector to plug. It's very efficient, both time and water. If, however, you have an elevated drain and you need to push the water out of the tank, then just like our normal application, we use a venturi injector to push the air into the tank.
Okay, so in instances where I don't have a floor drain available, I could still use the Dropkick. I just need to utilize the venturi injector.
Right. You lose a little bit in efficiency because you're actually using drive water to aerate the tank, but it'll work just the same.
So for people that are familiar with our residential products, at least with the Sidewinder and the Sidekick, they know we offer an ozone generator that you can hook up as an optional accessory to draw in ozone instead of just air. And that is available with this product also?
Yep, absolutely. We see on the top of these tanks back here, there's tubing that is plumbing each of these tanks in parallel to an ozone generator. It's actually behind one of the tanks. It's a unit that includes an air dryer because making ozone with humid air is difficult. So we actually dry the air as it's being drawn through. It'll generate up to 200 milligrams of ozone per hour. And the ozone in the top of the tank will eliminate bacterial growth in the media bed. It also provides more oxygen so that the conversion of iron and sulfur is more efficient.
So Patrick, with the valve being on the bottom of the tank instead of the top, some people might look at that and think this could be a problem when it comes time to remove the valve for maintenance or anything like that. Can you speak to how things go together down there and how do you get it off if you need to?
Sure. I happen to have a valve here, just conveniently. And what you have here, there's going to be a riser tube that mates with the valve. There's going to be a basket that attaches to this flange here. This will thread into the tank, leaving a union nut between the tank and the valve. And when you thread the union nut off, the valve will drop free, leaving the union, the basket, and the media in place. Nothing except water will come out the bottom of the tank. So what you do is you put the valve into an aeration cycle, run it to the air draw position, which of course drains the tank, just as it does every night. Once the tank is empty, spin the union nut off, you can remove the valve. And since you have quick connects on both inlet and outlet and on the drain, as long as you can get the clearance underneath, you can drop the valve free.
Okay. Yeah, so it's probably important when you're installing, I guess the tripod base of the tank kind of allows for that. You should always have plenty of room there once you loosen that nut to be able to drop the valve down and get it.
Right. The valve only has to drop about 1.5 inches to get clear of the riser, and you've got good 6 inches underneath. So it's not a problem. I've actually done it myself.
Right. And because of the unique design of this system, ideally, it should be a very rare occurrence for anyone to ever have to remove the valve from a tank. But it's good to know, looking at it, a lot of people would look at that and think, if you take the valve off, everything's going to let loose. But you're saying I can drain the tank, the media stays where it is because of the basket, and the valve just unscrews from that nut.
Right. If you need to inspect or service the seal and spacer stack or the piston, you can just remove that from the front of the valve without even dropping the valve off. So really, there is no good reason that I can think of why you would need to remove the valve.
That's true. It's not like more residential products. I'm used to going top down to get into the seal and spacer kit. Since we have a horizontal piston, we're accessing it from the front. It's very accessible down there.
you will still want to drain the tank.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely make sure you take pressure off there and drain it down. But man, even draining the tank is easier than ever because of that gravity design of the product. That's really cool. So we mentioned how the design of Dropkick helps to save water during the backwash cycle and specifically during the air replenish cycle. Do you want to talk a little more specifically about what that water savings looks like?
Sure. Since you only need to do a backwash every 7 to 10 days or so, because of the fact that we have separate backwash and aeration regeneration cycles, you're not wasting the water for backwash when you don't need to. Backwash can run several hundred gallons of water down the drain, times the number of tanks you have. So that really starts to add up. So the other aspect is that because we have the valve on the bottom and you can drain with gravity, assuming you have a floor drain, that's another 20 gallons of water that would normally be used as drive water to inject air into the tank. So, multiply that by the number of tanks you have, and you can see how quickly that adds up.
Yeah. So behind us here is a triplex system. Do you want to talk to the viewers a little bit about how easy the drop technology makes it to multiplex a system like this?
Sure. With the Drop Master controller, all you really need to do is to make sure that each of them have the same device ID number, and they will work as a cohesive unit with no additional programming. So by adding 3 Dropkick valves to the system, it knows that those are working in tandem, and it knows that it can only regenerate one of those at a time, and there's no additional programming necessary to do that.
So I'm not stooping down there programming each individual control valve. I'm pulling it up on the app. When I click Dropkick, and it just shows up as device 1, 2, and 3 within the same section.
And you tell the drop system what time of day you want the regeneration system to start. And after the first tank is regenerated, the second will regenerate, then the third, and with no overlap.
So the setup, obviously the plumbing is more complicated than plumbing in one system, but from a setup standpoint, on the app, setting up multiple tanks is no more difficult than if I was setting up one tank.
No, and if your needs for water flow grow, you can actually add additional tanks. All you do is start up the app, turn on Add Devices mode, power up the new valves, and they're joined to the system, and they'll just join in with the ones that were already there.
And I think that's a major benefit of all the drop products is how easy it is to expand a system.
Right. And they work together because a multi-tank system is going to have a non-bypassing piston and a shut-off position. You can have external leak detectors. So if a leak is detected or if a high flow rate is seen, it can shut the water off for you.
So yeah, it's worth mentioning, we haven't touched on it yet today, every drop control valve is capable of shutting off water, of being paired with leak detectors to do water shut off.
Yep.
So I noticed you haven't called this Proplex. So on our last live event, we talked about drop commercial Proplex softeners. How does this differ from that setup?
Proplex is a technology that we created for softeners specifically to make sure that we only have the valves online that are necessary to handle the water flow that is demanded at that point in time. Because with a softener, you really want to make sure that you've got a good amount of flow through the bed or you get channeling and other problems like that. Filters are different in that you're always going to have all the tanks online because you want the water flow through the media to be really as slow as possible. So unlike Proplex softeners that are bringing the tanks online and offline dynamically according to water flow, with filters, they're just on all the time, except when they're regenerating. And since the valves are able to communicate with each other and work as a cohesive unit, if you can't use a floor drain to aerate the tank and you are using an injector, we can actually use a different valve to supply treated drive water to keep the injector clean during the aeration cycle of a different tank.
Okay, so yeah, even when we're using an injector, we're sending treated water through that injector, so we're helping to eliminate iron buildup that would occur in the injector, causing a lack of air draw.
Yep.
Well, I think that about covers it for today. Thanks, Patrick, for your wealth of expertise and knowledge. It's always good to come over here to the lab and learn a little bit more. So as you've seen today, this system is really revolutionary in a lot of ways. We're taking several of the innovative features that we've introduced first in our residential products and applied it to a commercial context. We're also introducing several really revolutionary features that are exclusive to the Dropkick system. The fact that we're able to draw in a fresh tank of air without wasting any drive water and without having to use an injector and you have a floor drain nearby. And even When we are using an injector, we're able to put it in the multiplex format where we're driving that injector with treated water, eliminating the potential for iron buildup in that injector. And also the fact that it's able to perform multiple air replenish cycles per day, up to every 4 hours. Whereas if you're familiar with our residential single tank aeration filters, once a day is the most that you can draw air. So this is a really unique product for our commercial product line. We're really excited about it. We hope that all your questions got answered, but if they didn't, we'll see you in just a few seconds at our live Q&A.